Ye Kahani Badalni, as the name symbolizes, is symbolic of how many stories and what narratives need to be changed. Uh, Coming back to the specifics, rights of girl children is something that ActionAid have been advancing and has been central to our efforts since we launched our Beti Zindabad campaign. Now that is about 8 years ago. It predates the national campaign, which then in 2014 the Prime Minister of India launched about the girl children. So in fact, this campaign of ours is more towards focusing social attention, policy attention as well, to the discrimination and oppression that girls face and have faced over centuries, girls and women. And that can very well be seen in the declining sex ratio then. So that's how we launched this campaign. And this campaign sought to deliver, sort of celebrate daughters, change the mindsets of people in communities against son preference, and against all forms of discrimination that girls and women face. Ye Kahani Badalni is a specific initiative or episode, if I may say, a more recent one that you mentioned, which is around eradicating gender-based discrimination and practices. Now, this is focused on two specific districts of two states, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. So it's the Karauli district of Rajasthan, and it is the Muzaffarnagar district in Uttar Pradesh, where with support from United Nations UNFPA agency, as well as in partnership with local formations, Astitva Samajik Seva Sansthan in Uttar Pradesh in Muzaffarnagar, and Alwar Mewat Institute of Educational Development, a long-term partner in Rajasthan. Now, these are very two grounded organizations. So with together in this constellation, we are now focusing on these two districts which report very low child sex ratio. There's a major gap in gender gap in literacy and widespread early child marriages. So we together selected about 400 villages across these districts with the purpose of actually bringing about a change in how the social construct of gender is. And obviously, needless to say, this is a long-term effort. Now, here in these two districts, we have identified about 1,000 young volunteers, women and men, who are trained and capacitated as social change agents. And these 1,000 people work together with panchayat leaders, work together with families, work together with the local administration and other village frontline workers. They are actually working at the interface of behavioral change within these communities. Over the last 1.5 year, 1 year now, in fact, a little more than that, in an effort to bring about a change in the norms of how girl children are looked at or how girls are looked at. And this is a progress in making. But let me give you some examples. In Rajasthan, you may have heard of Akha Teej. So around the festival of Akka Teej, which falls in early spring, it's in April, here a range of child marriages happen. It is believed that that's a good time. And that's the time when a lot of young girls, children in fact, are married off. So within a 1 year of our intervention, at least in Karauli district, so I won't generalize it across Rajasthan, but within that particular month, a lot of child marriages happen. So within 1 year of this project, we have been able to dissuade in 400 villages, communities from stopping this practice. In fact, to tell you specifically, in the 400 villages that this project operates, roughly about 379 villages are now reporting some kind of a celebration at the moment of birth of girls. And it's a big change from what used to happen, where the birth of boys is obviously celebrated and was celebrated, and continues to be celebrated and should be celebrated. But equally well, the birth of girls is also now being celebrated, which used to be sometimes a moment for mourning in these villages. Uh, Many of these villages are reporting shift in the way the household chores are distributed. And based on this, we are now thinking of building up a national campaign on sharing of work. But at least in about 300, 296 to be precise, where we we're sort of monitoring data on this. 296 of these 400 villages across these two states, across these two districts, are now reporting a shift in household patterns of work distribution. and boys and men are coming forward and sharing a little bit more work than they have been in the past. And we hope this is now an equal share in the coming years. Domestic violence reports have gone down in 223 of those villages where we are monitoring. Alcoholism is reportedly contained. Considerable decline actually in alcoholism in at least about 200 of the 400 villages that we are working on. These are some of the indicators which, very small indicators, one may say at one level, but very significant indicators at another level, which are going to show what kind of societal and behavioral shifts are happening, and eventually structural shifts. Of course, we would like to see this century as a century where women are finally empowered. It has been an unfulfilled promise of history, and I think a social shift is in order in this century. And to this extent, we plan to extend this idea of changing the narrative, changing the story, changing the history, and in fact, the story of the history of exploitation of women. And I think if there's one time where we see hope, it is in this century, where finally women and men would by the end of the century, we hope, be on a completely equal space, equal share, equal footing, if not sooner than the end of this century. We hope, of course, it's a sooner one. And that's the big gap we are trying to address through this idea of Ye Kahani Badalni. It's a specific episode, it's a specific instance of a general work or a general campaign that we have with an idea of seeking equality for women and men.